Ladies and gentlemen, attraction is not just a superficial game of looks, words, or external gestures. It is a deeper, more profound, energetic exchange that operates beyond conscious awareness. Science, particularly in the fields of quantum physics and neuroscience, has shown us that everything in our reality is composed of energy, including our thoughts, emotions, and intentions. The way we carry ourselves, the frequency we emit, and the emotions we embody determine what we attract into our lives. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research in neurobiology and quantum physics explains that our personal energy field is constantly interacting with the energy fields of those around us. The human brain generates electrical activity, and the heart produces a powerful electromagnetic field that extends beyond the body. These fields communicate information to others on a subconscious level. This means that before a word is spoken, before a single action is taken, we are already broadcasting our internal state to the world. When a woman is attached to external validation, whether it be attention, approval, or affection, her energy reflects lack, neediness, and insecurity. The more she clings to a particular outcome or craves a response from someone, the more she signals to the universe and those around her that she is operating from a place of deficiency. Men, whether they realize it or not, can feel this energy. It creates an imbalance, a sense of pressure, and an invisible force that repels rather than attracts. This is not because men are consciously rejecting her, but because human nature is wired to be drawn to confidence, ease, and self-sufficiency. Conversely, when a woman embodies detachment not in a cold or indifferent way, but in an empowered and self-assured manner, her energy shifts entirely. She no longer seeks completion from an external source because she already feels whole within herself. Her emotions are stable, her presence is magnetic, and her aura exudes confidence. This is the kind of energy that naturally pulls people in. In quantum terms, the observer effect states that the mere act of observation alters the state of what is being observed. This means that when we fixate on something with excessive attachment, we distort its natural flow. Relationships and attraction work in much the same way. The more desperately one reaches for something, the more elusive it becomes. But when a woman masters the art of detachment, she aligns with the natural principles of abundance. She understands that she is not chasing or forcing anything, she is simply radiating the energy of fulfillment, which inevitably draws people and experiences toward her. Men are inherently drawn to women who embody this sense of wholeness. It is not about playing games or withholding affection, but about being so internally fulfilled that her presence becomes a gift, not a request. When she operates from this space, she is no longer controlled by fear, insecurity, or external reactions. She steps into her power, allowing attraction to unfold naturally and effortlessly. This is the science of attraction and energy, where alignment, detachment, and self-mastery create an irresistible force that needs no chasing, no convincing, and no proving. Emotional dependency is one of the most significant barriers to personal freedom, self-mastery, and genuine attraction. It is the subconscious need for external validation, reassurance, and security from another person. It manifests in ways that may seem subtle, seeking constant attention, craving approval, fearing abandonment, but its energetic impact is profound. When a person becomes emotionally dependent on someone else, they unknowingly give away their power. Their mood, self-worth, and sense of stability become tethered to another person's actions, words, or presence. This creates an energetic imbalance that is not only exhausting for the one experiencing dependency, but also overwhelming for the one on the receiving end. From a scientific perspective, the brain operates on conditioned patterns. Neural pathways are formed based on repeated thoughts and emotional experiences. When a person continuously associates love, security, and happiness with another person, their brain becomes wired to depend on that external source for emotional regulation. This is why people who are emotionally dependent often feel anxious when they do not receive immediate responses, why they overanalyze interactions, and why they experience emotional highs and lows based on how another person behaves. Their brain has been programmed to seek stability outside of themselves rather than cultivating it internally. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research in neuroplasticity explains that the brain does not distinguish between real and imagined experiences. It responds to thoughts as if they were reality, releasing corresponding chemicals that reinforce emotional states. When someone is emotionally dependent, they create repetitive mental loops of insecurity, fear, and attachment, strengthening the neural circuits of neediness. Over time, this becomes their default state. The more they rely on another person to fill an emotional void, the more their brain reinforces the belief that they cannot be whole on their own. Breaking free from emotional dependency requires a complete rewiring of the mind. It is not about suppressing emotions or pretending not to care. It is about shifting the internal source of fulfillment. Instead of looking outward for validation, attention, or reassurance, one must learn to generate those feelings from within. This begins with self-awareness. Recognizing the patterns of dependency is the first step to dismantling them. Each moment of seeking external approval is an opportunity to pause and redirect energy inward. Detachment does not mean shutting down emotionally, it means mastering the ability to feel deeply without being controlled by those feelings. It is the art of experiencing love without losing oneself in it. When a person is no longer emotionally dependent, they do not react from fear. They do not seek constant validation or panic in moments of uncertainty. Instead, they become centered in their own worth. Their emotions remain stable regardless of external circumstances because they have cultivated an internal foundation that cannot be shaken by another person's presence or absence. This transformation requires a shift in focus from lack to abundance. Instead of fixating on what is missing, attention must be redirected toward personal growth, passion, and self-love. When a person stops seeking someone to complete them, they naturally become whole. They no longer need to chase love, affection, or approval because they are already aligned with a state of fulfillment. This shift is palpable. People can feel when someone is emotionally free, just as they can sense when someone is clinging out of fear. The energy of self-sufficiency is magnetic. It draws others in without effort. Emotional dependency is a learned behavior, and like all learned behaviors, it can be unlearned. The process begins with awareness, continues with conscious effort, and solidifies through consistent practice. When someone detaches from the need for external validation, they reclaim their power. They stop reacting to the world and start creating their reality. They move through life with ease, knowing that their worth is not dictated by anyone else. This is true freedom. This is true attraction. The brain is a powerful instrument shaped by every thought, emotion, and experience. It operates like a complex network of electrical circuits reinforcing patterns over time. When a person repeatedly engages in the same emotional responses, seeking external validation, fearing abandonment, or depending on others for self-worth, these behaviors become ingrained in the brain's neural pathways. Over time, emotional dependency stops being a conscious choice and becomes an automatic reaction. The good news is that, through neuroplasticity, the brain can be rewired. The process of becoming self-sufficient is not just an emotional or psychological shift, it is a biological one. Dr. Joe Dispenza's work in neuroscience and personal transformation explains that thoughts and emotions generate electrical and chemical signals that shape the brain's structure. When a person continuously thinks in a certain way, whether it be self-doubt, neediness, or insecurity, the neurons associated with those thoughts fire together repeatedly, strengthening their connection. This is why people who are emotionally dependent often feel trapped in their patterns. They have conditioned their brains to operate from a place of fear, lack, and attachment. But the same mechanism that created these patterns can be used to break them. Rewiring the brain for self-sufficiency begins with interrupting old patterns. Every time a person catches themselves seeking validation, feeling anxious about someone's response, or fearing being alone, they have a moment of awareness, a space in which they can choose a different reaction. This moment is critical. It is where transformation begins. Instead of reinforcing the old neural pathways of dependency, a new response must be introduced: self-assurance, emotional stability, and the internal generation of worth. The key to lasting change is repetition. The brain does not change overnight, but with consistent effort, new pathways are built and old ones weaken. Just as muscles grow stronger with exercise, neural connections strengthen with practice. When a person repeatedly affirms their self-worth, engages in fulfilling activities, and consciously detaches from the need for external reassurance, their brain adapts to this new way of being. They begin to experience internal security as a natural state rather than something they must chase externally. Meditation and visualization are powerful tools in this process. Studies have shown that the brain does not differentiate between an imagined experience and a real one. By mentally rehearsing self-sufficiency, visualizing scenarios where they feel whole, at peace, and in control of their emotions, a person can condition their brain to adopt these states in reality. The more vividly and frequently this is practiced, the stronger the new neural pathways become. Over time, self-sufficiency becomes second nature. Detaching from external validation does not mean isolating oneself or rejecting relationships. It means approaching them from a place of wholeness rather than need. When a person no longer relies on others for emotional stability, they enter relationships with confidence, clarity, and balance. They do not react out of fear, nor do they seek constant reassurance. Instead, they exude an energy of self-containment that is inherently attractive and deeply fulfilling. This process is not about controlling external circumstances, but mastering internal states. Life will always bring uncertainty, and people will always have their own free will. The goal is not to manipulate or force outcomes, but to remain unaffected by them. And when a person no longer depends on external factors for their well-being, they experience true freedom. They move through life with ease, knowing that their power is not given away, but cultivated within. Rewiring the brain for self-sufficiency is one of the most transformative journeys a person can undertake. It is a shift from being controlled by circumstances to creating reality from within. It is the foundation of true confidence, unshakable self-worth, and effortless attraction. The present moment is the most powerful space in existence. It is the only point where life truly happens, where choices are made, and where energy is directed. Yet many people spend their lives either trapped in the past, reliving old wounds and regrets, or projecting into the future, consumed by worries, expectations, and anxieties. This inability to remain in the present creates a state of inner turmoil, preventing people from experiencing true peace, confidence, and attraction. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research highlights that when people live in a constant state of worry or regret, they condition their brains and bodies to stay locked in survival mode. The brain cannot distinguish between a real experience and a mentally rehearsed one. When a person repeatedly thinks about past disappointments or fears future outcomes, their body reacts as if those things are happening in real time. Stress hormones are released, reinforcing patterns of anxiety, insecurity, and emotional instability. Over time, this state of mind becomes their identity. Living in the present is about breaking free from these conditioned responses and reclaiming the power that exists in the now. It means no longer being emotionally bound to past experiences that no longer serve a purpose and no longer anxiously reaching for a future that has not yet arrived. It means fully embodying the current moment where clarity, confidence, and intuition are at their strongest. When a person is truly present, they become magnetic. They are not acting from a place of desperation, seeking something outside themselves to fill a void. Instead, they are completely engaged with reality as it is, unbothered by uncertainties, unattached to outcomes, and in full control of their energy. This presence is powerful. People are naturally drawn to those who exude a calm, centered, and self-assured aura. And one of the reasons detachment is so attractive is that it signals confidence in the unfolding of life. A person who is present does not chase, force, or cling. They understand that what is meant for them will flow effortlessly into their reality. This certainty is not rooted in passivity, but in trust, the trust that everything they need already exists within them and that their energy is enough to shape their experience. Being present also removes the tendency to overanalyze, doubt, and self-sabotage. When a person lives in their head, constantly replaying past mistakes or predicting future scenarios, they disconnect from reality. They react not to what is actually happening, but to the stories they have created in their minds. This often leads to misinterpretation, unnecessary stress, and self-imposed limitations. But when a person anchors themselves in the now, they respond to life as it truly is, making decisions from a place of clarity rather than fear. Practices such as mindfulness, meditation, and breathwork are powerful tools for cultivating presence. These techniques train the brain to disengage from the habitual loops of overthinking and instead focus on the current moment. The more frequently a person practices presence, the easier it becomes to live in a state of flow where they are no longer controlled by external circumstances, but instead move through life with ease and confidence. Being present is not about suppressing emotions or pretending that challenges do not exist. It is about fully experiencing each moment without resistance, without attachment, and without fear. It is about embracing uncertainty with trust, knowing that life is always unfolding exactly as it should. This is where true freedom is found. This is where true attraction lies. There is a fundamental shift that occurs when a person moves from a state of seeking to a state of being. Seeking is rooted in lack. It is the endless pursuit of something outside of oneself, whether it be love, validation, success, or happiness. It is the belief that fulfillment exists somewhere in the future or in the hands of another person. This state of mind keeps people in a constant loop of wanting, chasing, and waiting for something external to complete them. But true power, true attraction, and true peace do not come from seeking. They come from being. Being is the embodiment of self-sufficiency, the realization that everything a person desires already exists within them. It is a state of wholeness where there is nothing to chase because nothing is missing. In this state, energy is no longer projected outward in search of approval, love, or security. Instead, it is cultivated internally, creating a deep magnetic presence that naturally draws in the right people, experiences, and opportunities. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research on quantum physics and neurobiology explains that the energy we emit is what we attract into our lives. When someone operates from a place of seeking, their energy signals to the universe that they are lacking something. They are energetically broadcasting neediness, insecurity, and attachment, which in turn repels what they desire. The more they chase, the more elusive their desires become. This is because the act of seeking reinforces the belief that they do not already have what they want, and this belief is what the brain and body respond to. But when a person shifts from seeking to being, everything changes. Instead of looking for love, they embody love. Instead of striving for validation, they carry an unshakable confidence that does not require external approval. Instead of fearing abandonment, they trust in their own presence. This shift is not about pretending or playing a role. It is about deeply internalizing the truth that they are already whole. This transformation requires a rewiring of the brain. Years of conditioning have trained people to believe that happiness, love, and security must be acquired from external sources. Society constantly reinforces this idea through relationships, achievements, material possessions, implying that fulfillment is always just out of reach. But in reality, fulfillment is a state of being, not something to be earned. The brain must be trained to recognize this truth through conscious awareness and consistent practice. Meditation, visualization, and affirmations are powerful tools in this process. By repeatedly reinforcing the feeling of already having what they seek, a person can condition their mind to shift from lack to abundance. And when they practice embodying confidence, love, and fulfillment in the present moment, their brain begins to accept it as their reality. Over time, this new way of being becomes second nature. One of the most profound results of this shift is the effortless attraction that follows. When someone is no longer seeking, they become a magnet for what they once chased. Their energy is no longer grasping, desperate, or forceful. It is calm, assured, and inviting. They do not need to prove themselves, convince anyone, or manipulate situations to get what they want. They simply exist in a state of certainty, and the right people and experiences align with them naturally. This is the difference between chasing and attracting. Seeking creates resistance. Being creates flow. When a person stops looking for something outside themselves and starts embodying the energy of what they desire, they enter a state of alignment where everything falls into place without effort. This is the ultimate freedom. It is no longer about trying to become something, it is about realizing that they already are. There is a profound shift in power when a person transitions from being a reactor to becoming an observer. Most people move through life reacting to their circumstances, allowing external events, people, and emotions to dictate their inner state. They are controlled by their environment, their past experiences, and their subconscious conditioning, often feeling like they have little control over their thoughts and emotions. But when someone learns to become the observer of their mind, rather than the reactor to their emotions, they step into a state of true mastery. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research in neuroscience and quantum physics explains that human beings operate largely on autopilot, running on subconscious programs formed by past experiences. When someone is triggered by a situation, it is not the situation itself that causes the reaction, but the conditioned response stored in their brain and body. If, for example, a person has experienced abandonment in the past, their nervous system is wired to react with fear and anxiety whenever they perceive a similar threat. They might panic, seek validation, or lash out, all because their body is programmed to react rather than observe. But the moment someone becomes aware of this pattern, they create a gap between stimulus and response. They begin to see their emotions as passing waves rather than absolute truths. Instead of immediately reacting to a situation, they step back and observe it. This single shift changes everything. Observation is the foundation of emotional intelligence. It is the ability to witness one's thoughts and feelings without being consumed by them. Instead of identifying with the fear, insecurity, or anger that arises, an observer recognizes it for what it is: an old pattern, a conditioned response, a temporary state. This awareness allows them to choose their response rather than being controlled by automatic reactions. When a person becomes an observer, they no longer fall into emotional traps. They stop overanalyzing messages, stop taking everything personally, and stop reacting impulsively to situations. They realize that their power lies not in controlling the external world, but in managing their internal state. This shift is incredibly attractive. People who have mastered emotional self-regulation exude a calm, grounded presence that others are drawn to. They do not chase, beg, or cling. They simply exist in a state of quiet confidence, knowing that their emotions no longer control them. Meditation is one of the most effective tools for developing this level of awareness. When a person practices stillness and mindfulness, they train their brain to detach from fleeting emotions and thoughts. They begin to understand that their mind is like a sky, and thoughts are merely passing clouds. Some thoughts are stormy and intense, while others are light and insignificant. But none of them define the sky itself. The more a person cultivates this awareness, the more they free themselves from the prison of reactivity. Becoming the observer also means no longer allowing other people's actions to dictate one's self-worth. When someone is reactive, they take things personally, whether it be a delayed response, a rejection, or a change in circumstances. They internalize external events as reflections of their value, but an observer understands that people's actions are projections of their own reality, not a measure of anyone else's worth. They do not attach meaning to every interaction. They do not spiral into self-doubt over things beyond their control. They remain detached, not because they do not care, but because they refuse to let external forces shake their inner peace. This is the essence of true power. It is not about suppressing emotions or pretending to be unaffected. It is about understanding that emotions are temporary and that responding from a place of clarity rather than impulse leads to far greater control over one's life. When a person masters the art of observation, they no longer seek control over external circumstances. They no longer crave validation or fear rejection. They move through life with an effortless confidence, knowing that no matter what happens, they are always in control of how they respond. This shift from reactivity to observation is the key to emotional freedom. It is the difference between feeling like a victim of circumstances and becoming the creator of one's own reality. It is the path to unshakable confidence, irresistible presence, and a life of deep inner peace. When a person shifts from being a reactor to becoming an observer, they reclaim control over their mind, emotions, and energy. No longer bound by subconscious programming or external circumstances, they step into a space of true mastery where they respond to life with clarity and confidence rather than fear and impulse. This transformation is not about indifference or suppression. It is about detachment from the emotional chaos that once dictated their actions. By rewiring the brain for self-sufficiency, living in the present moment, and shifting from seeking to being, a person radiates an energy of wholeness and certainty. They are no longer controlled by their environment or by the behavior of others. Instead, they cultivate an unshakable foundation of inner peace that makes them magnetic. The moment they stop chasing, everything they once sought begins to flow effortlessly into their lives. True power lies not in controlling the external world, but in mastering the internal one. The one who is emotionally free, present, and self-contained holds an undeniable force of attraction. They move through life with ease, knowing that their worth is not determined by circumstances but by the energy they choose to embody. This is the ultimate shift from seeking to being, from reacting to observing, from attachment to true freedom. And in this state, everything that is meant to align will do so naturally, without force, without fear, and without resistance.